boy. He overtook your boy. Your dog.
Well, Christian Horner said it. He said it.
Not me.
If you watch Drive to Survive, he said it.
Hi everyone, welcome to Wheelie Up, where three black women talk all things Formula One. I'm Simone. As you can see, things are a little different this week. I'm all the way in St. Lucia for a wedding, so unfortunately I can't be there this week for recording. But my other F1 honeys, Shanice and Anita, are there to keep you company, and I hope the show is a great one.
I'm jealous, Anita.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie, the sun's out here, man. We're fine.
No,
I need the beach. We don't need the beach.
In the tropics with Simone, chilling, having cocktails. But you know what? We are here talking Formula One, so.
And if you want, after this, we can go get cocktails too. It's fine.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea, actually. Hold to that one. Right, so let's get into the race a little bit. We've obviously got a new sprint format this week. A bit of beef with George and Max, but when doesn't Max have beef with anyone? We've got a bunch of rookies on the track, which I kind of feel like is impacting my experience of the race. I know, Anita, you disagree. My question is was this race exciting enough? And I know that's not just what Formula One is about, but it didn't feel like it, to me. So I think, let's take our first pit stop of the pod. We'll take a lap. And we'll see what we thought of this race. We'll review all things action on the track, race reactions, qualifying, and anything else worth talking about.
It's time to take a lap.
So overall for me, Anita, I've already said it was a bit boring, but what did you think?
I don't know. I feel like I'm watching a different race to everyone. Clean racing doesn't mean boring racing. I had a good time watching it. I was sitting down, I was eating my pasta. I just made breakfast. Yeah, I had pasta for breakfast, don't judge me. But I was eating my pasta and I was having a nice pineapple juice. The sun was out. And I had a good time watching it. I feel like there was drama, but in a sense around the race, around the sprint, around everything else. And I was anticipating, not a great race, but I was anticipating a decent race with people, trying to make up for places. I did have Checo as my winner and he came through for me as well. So I thought it was a decent race.
I'm wondering if maybe, my experience was impacted by the new sprint format. So I don't know. Let's talk a little bit about what this new sprint format is, what it means, kind of what happened then in qualifying. So George said, I was having a look at what everyone's reactions was to this. George said it was boring to drive. Max didn't like it, but obviously what else does he like apart from winning anyway? Naomi Shiv said to keep it, but tweak it. In a nutshell, overall, the drivers thought it was a good idea, but it just needs, a bit of looking into, few corrections made. So Anita, come in, fill the gaps where you think that I'm wrong here, but this is what I've gathered. Okay. So it's in its third season. There'll be 6 events in 2023. It all started this weekend in Baku. So essentially, we have a 100-kilometer race with no mandatory pit stops unless you need repairs. So it's a bit more focused on, let's say, the attacking side of the racing. The race this weekend in Azerbaijan it was supposed to run for 17 laps, which is about half an hour. And there's 8 points to be gained, but only by the top spot. So it all descends down. P1 will have 8 points, descending down to P8. And it's a bit of a separate kind of event. That's how I viewed it. It's a little bit different this year as well to last year. So this year in 2023, there's 2 qualifying sessions. The first will takes place on the Friday. But that session determines a starting grid for Sunday. Then there's a second shorter qualifying session, which runs on the Saturday morning, which replaces the second 1-hour practice session, setting the grid for the sprint. Are we there? There's a lot.
There's so much to just unpack from a race weekend. It's too much. I don't like it personally. I'm with Max Verstappen on this, but don't scream at me. I'm actually with him. Do you know what? One thing he said it's changing the DNA of the sport, right? And I never thought I'd agree with something that comes out of Max Verstappen's mouth. I swear to you, I just never thought it would happen because he's always too extreme.
Not in this season, because a couple of seasons ago, Ania, I would have said, I don't know, you were Max's biggest fan.
I'm a new person. I'm a new human being. Abu Dhabi scarred me, and ever since then, I said no. I cannot support this man. I can't. But no, I do think it is changing the DNA of Formula One, and it's like, all sports evolve and stuff. And I get that. Like football evolved with VAR. I don't know what other sports have evolved, but football's evolved. Basketball's evolved. A lot of sports have evolved. And I get the need for change and I get the need for entertainment. But I just don't think the whole sprint format as it is right now, as it stands right now, is worth all the drama. I don't think it's entertaining enough. And I think that teams are losing out on building their cars or making their cars or getting the right data for their cars for the Grand Prix on Sunday, which ultimately gives you the most points.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that Saturday sprint shootout kind of affects everybody's race on a Sunday, but in a different way. Like it's not supposed to affect them because it's a separate thing. But obviously, if you crash or mash up your car, you don't have enough time to collect data now. I don't know, like, what do you think could be changed about it, if anything? I personally I don't know, maybe it's because I love the history of Formula One. I like the way that it is, but actually it probably does need to evolve in some way, but I'm trying to think maybe this isn't it. I'm
just like, doing it on a race weekend is probably the worst thing you can do. Yeah. If you're going to change it, do it on the Thursday when the drivers come in for their presses. Do it on the Thursday. Do it with, I don't know, a new kind of initiative. Maybe get equal cars for everybody and do a sprint shootout with that. Do a sprint with equal cars, make that more interesting and see, who's the fastest driver on the track, really on that track that weekend kind of thing. But obviously that will cost way too much money anyway. But something like that would be more exciting. All of this sprint shootout on a Saturday and it doesn't even count to your points in the Grand Prix on the Sunday. All of that is whack, man. I just feel like the FIA sat there and thought, what can we do to make more money and to have more viewers? And this was it.
That's exactly what I was about to say. It just seems like they're just trying to find new ways to make more money. Because I don't really think it's going to bring in new fans, because what's the point? Like, I get it. It's kind of like, and they kind of did a similar comparison when I was reading the articles on like the F1 news where they were talking about it's kind of like T20 cricket. I would actually compare it more to like the 100 in cricket, where you have just 100 balls and then that's it. Like this is just, 100 kilometers, etc. So for me, I think that they're trying to make it a faster version of Formula One, but actually that isn't why people watch it. We're already watching fast cars.
Exactly. Why do I need to see them go faster? I just
but also like ruin the risk of like Sunday's race.
Yeah.
And that is the big finale. Like you wouldn't have like a small little race that kind of can compromise in some ways on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly. And poor Alpine, they had an awful weekend throughout. Ocon had to start in the pits. Gasly didn't have any luck with the crash. And it's just like they didn't have enough time to fix their cars. Nick De Vries for Williams. Is it Williams? No. AlphaTauri got into a crash as well. And, it's just giving them a little bit less time to fix their cars, figure out the data. And it's not worth it, bro. I'm not with Max Verstappen in the sense of let's just scrap the whole thing. I'm with Naomi Schiff in let's tweak it and let's figure out what can work for this to be more exciting and less risk-free. More risk-free.
I actually really like your idea of having let's just give them all the same car and battle it out. I think that would be such a sick idea in Formula One, because then you're literally going driver against driver. It's not necessarily about the cars, the tech. It's a bit more about the strategies maybe, but it is about the skill of the driver. And that is what actually I would love to see a bit more of in Formula One. And I think this is why this race in particular felt a little bit boring to me, because you are kind of watching the same dominant players. And I know we always go through that. It used to be Lewis. Now it's, Max and Checo and just Red Bull in general. So I get that. But also it just feels like I want to see a bit more of the drivers coming through to demonstrate their skill. And I think because we have quite a few newer people, a few rookies on the track, actually, we're not being able to see the best of them because some of them might not be in the best cars or might not have the best tech or the most money. But it doesn't mean that they're a bad driver. And I think it would be great to see some of that. So, yeah, Anita, pitch it. Call them up, FIA. She's got an idea.
Listen, FIA, if you want my number, hit me up.
You heard it here first. So, and we know now, not saying we're going to copyright it, but if they do come out with this idea, we're going to be like, yo, Anita, like, where did they?
I am suing everyone. Everyone will pay my bills, my grandchildren's bills, my great-grandchildren's bills. I swear to you.
So you were messaging in our group chat about this a lot, but can you just explain to me a little bit more about the beef between Max and George that happened before we move on to talking about the general race?
See, this was in the sprint. The sprint just brought bad vibes. When I tell you, right, so Max Verstappen and George Russell. So George Russell started right behind Max Verstappen. He started in fourth, Verstappen started in third. The race begins, and Leclerc and Perez are having their own little battle in the front. George now is wheel to wheel with Max Verstappen. When I say wheel to wheel, it's as close as it can get, right? The first time they kind of got into it, it was kind of a fair battle. I thought it was pretty fine. Second time they got into it, George touched Max Verstappen a little bit. Turns out it wasn't a little bit. Turns out he got a lot of damage in his car. And Max Verstappen came out with a hole in his car, a hole in his side pod. And then the third time they got together, Max Verstappen, George didn't leave Max any room, and Max crashed into the wall a little bit, but it didn't affect him too tough because Max was still able to regain his place after the safety car, right? Cool. At the end of the race,
this is what gave me jokes.
I could not believe what happened. At the end of the race, George Russell walks up to Max and says, look, sorry, mate, I had cold tires. I couldn't control it, blah, blah, blah. Max goes, yeah, but we all have cold tires, though. I'm looking at Max like, surely this isn't happening. He says, we all have cold tires. That's not an excuse.
But don't have enough grit.
Yeah, and he didn't have enough grip.
We all don't have any grip, though.
We all don't have any grip, though. We all have cold tires, blah, 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 blah. Then he goes, just remember that for next time, innit, dickhead.
Yeah. When he said that, I was thinking, shit, George, you need to look out. Ola's coming through. We've got to clip that in. Ola, our producer, made a little appearance there. It was shocking, yeah. Like, I was thinking, George, you need to be careful now because I believe Max. I believe he's a man who does what he says.
Do you know what Christian Horner said? Christian Horner was like how Max has a memory of an elephant. Do you remember that elephant that came back here to kill a woman that did the elephant dirty in the village?
Yeah.
Do you remember that story? Listen, Max Verstappen is coming for George. I don't know how he's going to do it, but he's going to come for George sometime in this season. I remember last season when Checo hindered his performance in Monaco, right? And Max couldn't get pole in Monaco, right? And then when Checo needed Max the most towards the end of the season, Max said no. Max remembers these things. So I'm scared for George. I'm scared for his life because look at what happened to Lewis last year. Not last year, in 2021. Max drove on his head. What's he going to do to George?
Honestly, I thought when I heard Max said, oh, well, I'll remember that. I was thinking, oh my God, like this is actually serious. And he's been serious. And I know on a future episode of this podcast, we're going to be discussing, we're going to be like, but the thing is, you can never tell if this is like a Max, a Max doing what he says or just a Max incident. But I do think there's going to be a few times in a few episodes where we're like, this was the time he said he was coming for George. And it might be 3 episodes later. No, this is the time he said he was coming. This must be the real one. So, yeah.
He's going to come multiple times. And I feel for George. But one thing I know about George, he's got that dog in him, man. If he comes for George, George is going to come right back. And I'm waiting for it.
I love that. I love that about George, though. He's got that kind of thing coming through. And I'm loving it. Okay, so on to the race in general. Genuinely, yeah. I mean, obviously we were discussing this a little bit before. we got our producer Ola involved in a little bit because it was kind of like a 50-50. Was this race boring or not? Was it that exciting? And don't get me wrong, you're right, Anita. You know, it's not all of, you know, clean racing doesn't mean boring.
Thank you.
Right. But there was just things that happened in this race where I was kind of like, well, I am what he said. That's too clean. You know that my favourite race is Monaco because I know there's going to be something going down there, right? But this one, I was kind of like, it's not as excited as any of the previous Azerbaijan Grand Prix. So I don't know. For me, it kind of felt a bit stale, and I didn't know, is it something to do with the sprint and like where people are starting on the grid? I honestly don't know.
Look, I just don't know how you can find Monaco interesting and say that this was boring. And you know how I feel about Monaco. Monaco, once you do the quali, you might as well just give the race positions like that because no one overtakes in Monaco. Monaco is just so dead. But I get why people say that this was a boring race because, you know, there weren't any crashes. There weren't really many safety cars. There weren't many incidents. Apart from Nick de Vries doing Nick de Vries things. It was just a bit, you know, bland. But I do think there were some elements to the race that kind of showed, you know, I feel like the drivers and their kind of driving skill as well and how important it is to have a team behind you. It gave me a lot of things to kind of think about during this race, especially with decision making, with the drivers and how they drive and the skill sets the drivers possess to make certain moves, etc. So I do think that it was a really good race in terms of understanding the drivers, understanding the teams, and understanding the cars, but there wasn't much drama to it.
Yeah, and you know that I love Formula One for the drama. But having said that, I'm always like, I don't want anyone to get hurt. Oh, I hear it was like, you know, I think about that. So I can't complain that this race was too clean. But I do just think there was things in there, like, for example, when we're like planning who's our star boy going to be, who should have stayed at home, I was looking and I just didn't think the results were that good. I think, don't get me wrong, everyone showed a lot of skill. And I think, you know, having no crashes is really important, actually. And it shows that people are improving, especially if we have quite a few new people on the track. But I also think that actually, I don't know, that missing that element of drama can sometimes make it feel a bit bland and a bit stale. And the need for something like even like people going into the pits. You know how sometimes there's a bit of pit drama. You know when Ferrari was, you know, driving over some kit or what. You know, there's always a few things to talk about, even if it's like a slow pit stop. But I didn't even think we had much of that actually in this race. It was a little too clean for my liking. And a lot of the times, I think, where people finished, for me, like it wasn't good enough. Do you know what I mean? When one of the commentators says, oh, you know, Pierre Gasly's taken over into P18, that's the most action he's had all weekend. I was like, well, that's it, isn't it? That just ticks the box. It was a bit dry.
I'm just like, I get that. I do get that. But there's other things to kind of tone into and talk about, you know, how drastically Ferrari has dropped back from Red Bull, you know, because the overtakes that Max and Perez did, it didn't take much for them to overtake Leclerc. Talk about how the safety car potentially gave Perez that kind of ammunition to really go after the world championship. We can talk about Lewis Hamilton having to fight back from where he ended up in P13 after the safety car back to P6. Talk about George Russell having to concede a place to Lewis Hamilton, how the discussions about who's the faster driver, Lewis or George, can now be put to rest kind of thing. I feel like there were so many minuscule talking points that were in this conversation. Talk about Lando Norris, you know, getting into the points for the first time. You know, Lando Norris and Piastri were fighting and flipping 18th and 19th in like the first race. And now they're fighting for points again, which is really great because they bought some upgrades, you know. I feel like there were so many tiny things to talk about, but it wasn't so drama-filled. Even Albon having a great weekend, but finishing outside of the points. Magnussen having a shit weekend, but still finishing above Hulkenberg. Things like that, you know? So I just thought, there are still a lot more things to talk about. But I do get when people say it's boring because we just knew Red Bull was going to win. It was either going to be Max Verstappen or Checo because their car is just ridiculous.
But I am actually glad though that Checo won, because I feel like it's putting Max, I don't like, not in his place, but it's kind of letting him know that like it's a good car. So actually, a lot of people who would drive this car would probably win and maybe even still beat Max. Obviously, it's all to do with strategy, but yeah. I mean, if we run down like the top three, we had Checo, we had Max, we had Charles Leclerc, which was his first podium of the season so far, which I actually think highlights how poor Ferrari are doing this season as well, which is a bit of a shame. Like, it didn't sound right when like I was seeing that. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, it is. Oh, that's really sad. That's my team. Shit. I'm going to get cussed out again. But yeah, I think, you know, when you run that down, like they are names that we hear all the time.
Yeah.
So it's a bit, I don't know, like I want to see some fresh meat in there, but I think you're right, you know, talking about Lando finally making his overtake. And yeah, I think that was nice to see. And actually it gives us an opportunity to talk about some of the smaller things, but are still deeply important in Formula One, which is more, I guess, necessarily about strategy rather than look at who crashed this week.
Exactly. It's not every day you talk about the crashes. Sometimes let's talk about the strategy. Let's talk about the overtakes. And even Lando Norris getting that overtake on Hulkenberg, Alonso getting that overtake on Carlos Sainz was so important as well. And also Alonso getting, who did he overtake as well? I think he overtook Albon in the first stint as well. Overtaking Albon was very important. Otherwise, he would have been stuck in a long-ass DRS train for a while. Lewis Hamilton having to overtake, I think it was Ocon and Hulkenberg on the restart, because if he didn't do that, he was going to be stuck in 12th place for a very long
That's
time.
What I was going to ask, actually. When they did the restart, did he start in P13?
I think when the safety car came out, he ended up in P13, but I think other people pitted, so it ended in P11.
Okay.
So by the start, it was P11, I think.
Wow.
We'll fact check, we'll VAR that.
But yeah, I think, Lewis Hamilton actually making a comeback, I thought was a really positive thing to see, because actually it made me think, I say comeback, obviously it was what, P6? But you know what I mean? Like, it was actually nice to see that he still got that in him, because at first at the start of the season, I was thinking, oh, maybe he's still struggling with the car. And yeah, maybe the car isn't as fast as Red Bull, but actually he can still drive well in the car. And I think that kind of gave me a bit of hope. You know, it's not like, obviously he's never going to be a bad driver, but it's that kind of seeing that hope for Lewis Hamilton. You don't ever want to see him per P13, do you? You don't ever want to see Lewis like not getting points. So obviously when he gets like P6, it's a little positive.
Exactly. I was like, yay, go Lewis. But it was so depressing. It was so depressing seeing him like that. But the thing is, it kind of like put to bed whether I thought Lewis was still in Formula One or not, like mentally.
Yeah. Exactly.
I feel like on a normal day, Lewis can do all of that in his sleep. Like, he was fine. His only trouble was getting past Carlos Sainz, and he even asked for more power because he needed more power, more energy to get past Carlos Sainz. But obviously the car just couldn't deliver. The car didn't have no juice, anything left in that car. Do you know what I mean? So that was pretty depressing, but it still showed me like, he's still got that fight in him, and that was great to watch.
He's got that fight in him, and the only reason, because I didn't think he had the fight in him, but I was watching like he was doing a lie detector test on Sky, and they actually asked him like, are you gonna, what was the question? It was something like, are you gonna like get your 8th world championship or something like that, or are you not gonna stop until you've got that? Or so it was a question like around that. And he took a moment to pause, and I thought, oh my God, like he's considering like retiring before. But he said, yes, no, he's going to go. He's not going to stop until that moment. So, and do you know what's probably giving him hope? Like Alonso, do you know what I mean? Like Alonso's older than Lewis, and he's coming through and he's doing great. This is another great race, I think, for Alonso. You know, he did really well. And obviously he wasn't on podium this week. Yeah, he wasn't on podium this week, but he did still have a really good race. And his overtaking was good. And he actually ended up, I think, in still quite a good position considering. I mean, if we look where Lance Stroll was at, they've got the same car, but not the same driver.
Exactly. And by the way, I got it wrong. Alonso started behind Albon in the sprint, not in the race, in the sprint. All of this is so confusing. Anyway.
There is so much to unpack, like with this sprint and with the race. And because the race was like all these like little bits and pieces, there was a lot to unpack. But yeah, I think for me, Alonso finishing P4 was a brilliant result for him, actually.
Exactly. When he qualified in P6, right? He qualified in P6. Finishing P4 was great. Getting Carlos Sainz was great. And even towards the end, and this is what I found really interesting, right? Towards the end, when he started to kind of catch Charles Leclerc a little bit, right? Alonso was like, okay, I'm going to push now, basically. So he reserved his tires so he can push towards the end to try and catch Charles. But Charles knew that Alonso was going to do that. So Charles did the exact same thing. He preserved his tires throughout the race. So he didn't fight Max. He didn't fight Checo. He preserved his tires throughout the race, waited for the moment Alonso was going to push, and then he pushed himself. And he said that in his post race conference, and I thought, yeah, Leclerc, you smart, you sexy and cute, and you smart, because I could not. No, honestly, he was playing chess. Alonso was playing checkers, and that's why Charles Leclerc will one day be that world driver champion. You will see it. Maybe not with Ferrari, but you will see it someday.
I don't know. He signed a 5-year contract with Ferrari, so it's going to have to be with Ferrari. It's going to be anytime soon. But yeah, no, I totally agree, actually. I think he did really well kind of strategizing that. Yeah. But because of like, when these are sorts of things in Formula One that you do have to think about. And this is something that I actually think George is normally quite good at, sorts of strategies. And that's why I'm always rooting for George. And I'm always like, nah, man. And you guys always cussing me out. I'm like, nah, he came up with this sick daddy. You guys are always cussing me out for that. But anyway.
I'm not going to lie. George is warming up to me. He is. He is warming up to me, especially throughout that sprint race where he pushed it to Max. And he basically said, well, if Max was in my position, he would have done the exact same thing. And I felt that. And I believed him.
So, okay, right. Should have stayed at home.
Should have stayed at home.
Who are you thinking about but should have stayed at home? Because this is what I was talking about when I was saying, the race was a bit bland. And it's because you had people starting and finishing way behind. Like, it just made no sense to me, like what was happening with some of these like drivers.
Yeah, look, I have a few options, right? De Vries, option number 1.
Mm-hmm. I got that.
Alfa Romeo, option number 2, the entire team. The pit people, the strategy people, everybody in Alfa Romeo. That's option number 2. Hulkenberg and Ocon, number 3.
Oh, really?
100%.
Okay.
And the thing is, the reason why I say them too, is because they went the entire race on hard tires. They managed their tires well, but then towards, I think, like 5 laps to go, Hulkenberg was dropping and dropping and dropping. He was getting overtaken so easily. The reason why Lando could overtake him is because his tires were just absolutely gone. Both of these drivers knew that they still had to pit. They had to. As per regulations, you have to make that first pit stop, or otherwise you'll be disqualified from the race, right? They went to the end hoping for a safety car. With how the race was going, like I can understand. Azerbaijan, it does bring a lot of safety cars because it is a tricky track. But with how the race was going, they should have called them in a lot earlier and just gambled and put them on medium tires and seen if they could go all the way on medium tires, but they didn't want to do that. They should have stayed at home because in the end, they were 9th and 10th and they finished, 15th and 17th. What was the point?
Yeah.
There was no point.
Okay, so if you had to choose one of them, who were you going for?
One?
Yeah.
Wow, I could choose all of them. Like, I can't even differentiate between all 4. But if I really had to choose, I would choose Alfa Romeo purely because Valtteri Bottas pitted 3 times in a 1-stop race. So I couldn't understand that. He changed his tires 3 times and I just thought there must be something ridiculously wrong with this car for you to have to do that. And Valtteri he's been weaving in last place for quite some time now. Like he's been around the bottom for a minute. So something's wrong with that car. Joe Guan Yu is he's getting the most out of the car. Yeah, I do applaud him. But at
Well,
the same
not,
time,
not this week because
not this week. Yeah.
DNF, like, yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like they need to sort something out, or they can just keep staying at home. Enough is enough.
Yeah, that's true. I feel okay. So let me tell you who I think my options are for should have stayed at home then. So my should have stayed at home is either Nick de Vries or Zhou Jianyu. Because yeah, I mean, it was a DNF and it technically wasn't really his fault. I mean, he got called in, halfway to retire his car because of tech issues. But I just think that, I don't know, like, you kind of just, I mean, tech issues. It wasn't anything to do with the race. And obviously these things happen, but I do just think, we kind of need to see a little bit more from Alfa Romeo. Like, they're not giving their drivers, I think, I mean, to be fair, Bottas had he's had a lot of opportunity, but they're not giving some of their drivers, I would say, opportunity to actually let us see them perform well enough. Which is why I actually think your idea about having like a sprint with all the same car is a really good idea. Because what I'm like, I'm always complaining about Zoe, saying like, oh, well, he's not done anything, or we don't see him on the track, or what's happening. But maybe it is just the car. I mean, tech issues. I think that was such a basic thing that needs to be right. You can't have a driver retiring because of tech issues. But then again, it does obviously happen. If I had to choose one, I was definitely going to go with Nick.
Yeah, especially because he said that it was a driver error as well.
Yeah, he admitted it himself, and I felt then bad about picking him because I thought if he was listening to this podcast, he would probably agree. Okay, so my favourite part of the race now, Starboy, where we talk about the person who we think just had a really good race. They don't have to be someone who won, but they could have just had a nice race, been a good teammate. I don't know. Like, you know me, I'm always trying to put another positive spin on it in some way. I think some of them deserve a little praise if they're a good teammate. Who are you feeling for this one, Anita?
Checo. Sergio Checo Perez. 100%, because I feel like he made no mistakes in that race. He was on it from jump one. Obviously, starting in P3. What's it called? And he's the only driver as well to have won in Baku twice. So that is an accomplishment. He had Max Verstappen behind him. Max didn't have an answer to him. No matter the excuses that Max Verstappen makes, Max was like, oh, I couldn't find a brake balance. Oh, my tires were getting hot. Blah, blah, blah. In my head, I'm just like, you just didn't have the answers for Checo. Big Checo got it done, baby. He got it done. And obviously the safety car did favor him, which is fair. But like you said, these things happen. Technical failures happen. Safety cars happen. And at the end of the day, Red Bull, they should have strategized a bit better or made a better call with bringing Max Verstappen in, because once Nick de Vries got into the wall, Red Bull thought that he would be able to reverse out. However, I think if you can, just wait for another lap, because all it took was another lap for that safety car to come. And then Checo got called into box, and he didn't crack under pressure. He didn't crack under the restart. And, I'm just like, I'm really proud of Checo. And that really kind of, in my opinion, shook up the Drivers' Championship. Because now I'm thinking, Checo, you can actually win this. But let's see.
I agree, actually. And it's not that I didn't want to choose Checo for my star boy. It was more that actually I've already had him at least once on this series. And I'm always rating him. But that I will agree with everything you said. And also, God, it's made me really want Checo to win. I really am rooting for him. Like, I used to kind of root for Max a little bit, but obviously, that all got taken away.
Wait. You used to root for Max?
Not this season.
And you were getting on to me for rooting for Max. Hey, to all the listeners, you've heard it here first. Simone and Shanice always got on to me for wanting Max to win at least one Drivers' Championship. And now we find out that Shanice has been feeling the same way. My God.
This was more time ago. And I was always rooting for him as a driver. As a driver, as his skill, his ambition, But
I liked it.
I think at some point you have to kind of, it's that thing where you can't I've started to not be able to differentiate like the talent between like the person that they are. Like, at some point, it does like that balance does have to kind of come in, and it's starting to go the other way a little bit. So yeah, that's what. Yes, I did use through Max. I thought I still, I think he's a brilliant driver, but like even the way he spoke to George about the whole sprint thing, I thought it was just a bit out of order. And that time, was it the last race or the race before where Checo won and he sat in the like Max sat in the winner's seat, so Checo couldn't even sit down. Like, come on, like that is not a team player. Like,
did you see what Charles did after the race, which I thought was so funny? So Charles sat in Checo's seat after the race, yeah, and then Checo stood there, yeah, and then Charles goes, "Oh, do you want your seat?" And then Checo was like, "Nah, it's all right, it's all right, it's all right." Like, they laughed it off, and I'm like, was that a bit of shade, or?
You know what it is? It's because Checo's got bigger fish to fry. He don't care about your seat. He's got a trophy. Do you know what I mean? He's got bigger fish to fry. But yeah, that's why he can't be my star boy this week. I've had him, and I'm always rating him every week. So. For me, because I thought the race was like, again, as you were saying before, there was very small things in there to take away from it. I think it could be Lando for overtaking Hulkenberg eventually and getting some points. It could be Alonso for starting 6th and finishing 4th. It could be Leclerc for getting his first podium of the season, which I just think... I feel like I couldn't give it to him because actually it shows how poor Ferrari's been this whole season and it felt disappointing to me. I mean, Stroll started 9th and finished 7th. I mean, I was really kind of scratching around for some things. Like, I don't think I could give it to Lando for one overtake, but I've already had Alonso as my star boy. So I was really struggling. So in the end, I think because Ferrari's my team, I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc.
Oh my gosh, Denise!
Yes, I know. I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc for getting his first podium of the season. But that's only because at the end of the day, when I can't choose, I've got to rep my team. I've got to rep my team.
Shanice.
It is what it is.
Oh, God.
Like, I feel like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't the best race. He started, He
lost 2 positions.
Yeah, he
twice.
He started on podium, but at least he finished on pole. So I wish Simone was here because I feel like this is the time. That time where I stuck up for her when you were cussing her out.
Oh, you would have pulled your card.
Yeah, I'd be like, Simone, come in. I need to reel you in. It's still a highlight, though.
Well, sis. Okay. Think about it this way. Charles was on pole twice this weekend. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Charles finished 3rd twice this weekend. He dropped 2 places.
Man,
twice.
He's still doing better than a lot of. I don't think I can give it to Lando for doing an overtake and getting some points. That just feels like that's what he should be doing. He should be overtaking and getting some points. Alonso has enough experience where he should be in at least P4, and he's demonstrated that, right? So
what?
Yeah, like
he overtook your boy. He overtook your boy, your dog. Carlos Sainz, he overtook him. He said,
if you noticed in this whole episode, I have not mentioned Carlos Sainz's name once because I'm avoiding that one. I knew I would get cussed out if I mentioned his name once, so this is why I kept my mouth shut. There's certain things on this episode where I've kept my mouth shut because I am not here for the cussing today.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that's it. That's who I think. Like, my should have stayed at home. Who should not have turned up? Nick De Vries. My star boy, I'm gonna go with Charles Leclerc. I've got to rep my team.
Fine. For me, should have stayed at home. Alfa Romeo. No, did I go Alfa Romeo? I went Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo should have stayed at home. And my star boy is Big Dick Checo.
Well, Christian Horner said it. He said it.
Not me.
If you watch Drive to Survive, he said it. Okay, so I guess then it means it's time for us to wave the checkered flag on this episode. Next week, we're going to Miami, yes, which is one of my favorite races. not the favourite, but one of. And last year, you know, Ferrari, they were second and third. So I'm hoping we can get, you know, another maybe 1 or 2 podiums.
Not gonna happen.
Oh, damn.
Not gonna happen.
You're already putting a dampener on it. I was going to say, Anita, is there anything you're looking forward to in that race?
I think
Ferrari not making podium.
I honestly think it's gonna be Max, Checo, Alonso. I honestly think that's how it's gonna be.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not looking forward to anything. I'm looking forward to the big asses on my screen, and I'm looking forward to all the celebrities that are going to be there and see what they say about F1. That's what I'm looking forward to, because other than that, it's not like Lewis is going to win. As much as I want to have faith, and I love Lewis because he's a positive bunny, he's not going to win. If Checo wins, though, that'll be something to look forward to, and that'll be something that's really exciting, but I doubt it.